There's a specific story I tell myself when I am alone in a crowded room. I watch the people around me. I see them talking about the weather, their jobs, the algorithm's latest recommendation. And I feel something very specific in my chest. It isn't just boredom. It isn't just anxiety. It is pity. People touching each other's arms, leaning in, performing social rituals. I tell myself, they are asleep. And I am awake. I tell myself that I am disconnected because I am too deep for a shallow world. That my silence is a form of intelligence, and their noise is a form of emptiness. I have convinced myself that my isolation is a noble sacrifice, the price I pay for seeing what others cannot see. But I need to tell you something I've been avoiding for years. That story? It might be a lie. It might be a sophisticated psychological defense mechanism designed to protect my ego from a much simpler, much more painful truth. I am not disconnected because I am deep. I might be disconnected because I am afraid. And I have turned that fear into an identity. I have rebranded my terror of participation as wisdom, and I am using my intellect not to engage with the world, but to build a wall against it. In psychology, there's a concept called dissociative intellectualization. It describes what happens when a mind becomes so terrified of the unpredictability of raw emotion that it retreats into the safety of analysis. You don't experience life, you study it. You don't feel emotions, you catalog them. You don't have conversations. You run simulations in your head to ensure you never say the wrong thing. I don't know if this describes you, but it describes me. And I've started to suspect that I am not a deep thinker, I am a spectator. And while I've been sitting in the corner analyzing the shallowness of the people around me, they have been doing the one thing I am too terrified to do. They have been living. Today, I want to do something uncomfortable. I want to examine the mythology of the deep thinker, not to destroy it, but to understand it. To look at the neuroscience of overthinking, the trauma behind selective empathy, and the dark reason why part of me prefers to be misunderstood. Let me show you the machinery. There is a network in the human brain called the default mode network. It's responsible for mind wandering, self-reflection, imagining the future, remembering the past. For most people, it activates when they're not focused on external tasks, when they're daydreaming on a bus or zoning out in a meeting. For some of us, it never shuts off. Research by Marcus, Rachel and others has shown that certain people have a more active DMN. They spend more time inside their heads. This is why some people are more introspective, more creative, more deep. But let's look at what that network is actually doing. For the average person, thought is a tool. They use it to solve a problem, and then they put it down. For some of us, for me, thought is a habitat. We live inside the tool. I wake up, and the simulation begins. I replay a conversation from 3 years ago, analyzing every pause, every micro-expression. I dissect a text message I received this morning, looking for hidden meanings. I construct 5 different scenarios for a meeting that hasn't happened yet, each with branching paths of possible humiliation. Why do I do this? I tell myself I am seeking understanding. I tell myself I am analyzing nuance, preparing for complexity. But I think I am actually searching for something else. Safety. Neuroscientist Stephen Porges developed something called polyvagal theory. It describes how our nervous system has different states. When we feel safe, we're in social engagement mode. We're present, curious, playful. When we sense danger, we move into fight or flight. And when we feel trapped, we freeze. But there's a fourth state that Porges didn't emphasize as much, one that researcher Deb Dana has explored: fawn. In fawn mode, your nervous system decides that the safest strategy is to predict, to please, to read the room so carefully that you never trigger a threat. I think for many of us who identify as deep thinkers, our overthinking is actually hypervigilance. If you grew up in an environment where the emotional climate was unstable, where a parent was unpredictable, where you were bullied, where you felt invisible unless you were smart, your brain learned a survival strategy. If I can think through every possible outcome, I cannot be blindsided. If I can analyze every micro-expression, I cannot be rejected. If I can understand the architecture of human behavior, maybe I can engineer my own safety. This is why the thinking loops. It loops because it is searching for a guarantee that doesn't exist. I am trying to solve the puzzle of the future, but the future is not a puzzle. It is a chaotic unfolding. And because my brain cannot solve chaos, it panics. It spins faster. It digs deeper. I call this depth. Psychologists call it rumination. It is the mental equivalent of pacing in a cage. I feel like I am moving. I am expending massive amounts of energy, but I am not going anywhere. I am just wearing a groove into the floor of my own mind. Think about the sheer calorie count of this mental life. How much energy gets spent analyzing things that never happen? How many arguments have I won in the shower? How many tragedies have I survived in my head that never touched me in reality? I am exhausted not because the world is too much. I am exhausted because I am living two lives simultaneously. The real one, which is usually quite manageable, and the simulated one, which is a constant catastrophe. And here is the most painful question. What if this exhaustion is my excuse? What if I have convinced myself that I am drained by the world, so I have permission to withdraw from it? What if my depth is just sophisticated avoidance? Now, let's talk about sensitivity. The narrative I've told myself my entire life is that I am an empath. I absorb the emotions of the world. I walk into a room and I feel the tension. I notice the cashier's sadness. I can tell when someone is lying. I carry the weight of other people's pain because my boundaries are just porous. I have worn this as a badge of honor. But recently, I read something by psychologist Susan Cain, the woman who wrote Quiet, the book that validated a generation of introverts. In a later interview, she said something that unsettled me, and I felt something crack open in my chest. What if what I call empathy is actually threat detection? Real empathy, according to researchers like Brené Brown, is the ability to hold space for another person's emotion without losing yourself. It's presence. It's, I see you suffering, and I will sit with you in that. What I do is different. I scan. I scan the room for shifts in atmosphere because I am terrified of conflict. I notice the cashier's sadness, not because I want to heal her, but because my nervous system needs to know. Is she a threat? Is she angry at me? Do I need to adjust my behavior to keep the peace? Carl Jung wrote about the concept of shadow virtues, traits that look like virtues but are driven by shadow motives. I adjust my personality to fit whoever I am talking to. I become a chameleon. I listen more than I speak, not because I am wise, but because if I am listening, I am not revealing. And if I am not revealing, I cannot be attacked. I call this being a good listener, but I think I am actually disappearing. I let other people fill the space because I don't believe I have the right to take up any. And then, inevitably, I become resentful. I go home drained. I feel used. I think, why does everyone dump their problems on me? Why does no one ask how I am doing? The answer is painful, because I never showed them who I was. I presented a mirror. I reflected them back to themselves. And people love mirrors, but you cannot love a mirror. You can only use it. By hiding my true thoughts, by filtering every sentence through 10 layers of, is this safe to say? I have trained the people around me to interact with a version of me that doesn't exist. And this leads to the deepest loneliness I know, being loved for a performance. Even when people say they like me, part of me doesn't believe them. How can I? They don't know me. They know the quiet, agreeable, insightful listener I constructed to survive. But here is the really hard part. I don't know if I know me either. I have been performing for so long that I am not sure what is real and what is defense mechanism. When I have a deep thought, I don't know if it's genuine insight or if it's just my brain doing what it learned to do to feel valuable. This is the cost of the empathy wound. You become so good at reading others that you lose the ability to read yourself. This brings me to the word I have used to judge myself and others for years: authenticity. I hate small talk. I hate corporate doublespeak. I hate the performance of social media. I crave real conversations. I want to talk about death, meaning, the structure of suffering. I have told myself that everyone else is wearing masks, and I am trying to take mine off. But psychologist Donald Winnicott described something called the true self and the false self. The false self is the socially adapted version we show the world. The true self is the raw, unfiltered core of who we are. Winnicott's insight was this: we need both. The false self is not a lie. It is a boundary. It is the part of you that knows how to function in society without bleeding all over everyone. The problem is not that we wear masks. The problem is when the mask becomes so rigid that we forget there is a face underneath. But here is my confession. I think I have done the opposite. I think I have used authenticity as its own kind of mask. It is easier for me to have a conversation about the heat death of the universe than it is to say, I felt hurt when you didn't call me back. It is easier to analyze the social construction of romantic love than to admit, I am terrified of being vulnerable with you. I use intellect to bypass intimacy. I treat conversations like chess matches. I want to skip the opening moves, the meaningless small talk, and go straight to checkmate. I say, I hate small talk because it's shallow. But researcher Sherry Turkle, who has spent decades studying conversation, says something that stopped me cold. Small talk is how we audition for intimacy. Small talk is not meaningless. It is the handshake of safety. It is how two nervous systems signal to each other. I am not a threat. Are you safe? Can we proceed? By refusing to engage in it, by demanding depth immediately, I am not being real, I am being demanding. I am asking for the reward of intimacy without paying the cost of building trust. And when people don't give me that immediate depth, I retreat. I go back to my books, my solitary walks, my analysis. I tell myself, I am a lone wolf. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote about the hedgehog dilemma. He said humans are like hedgehogs in winter. We need to huddle for warmth, but if we get too close, our quills prick each other. So we move apart. Then we get cold, and we move back together. We are trapped in an endless cycle of freezing or bleeding. Schopenhauer's conclusion was bleak. We are doomed to loneliness. But philosopher Martin Buber offered a different image. He talked about the Eithal relationship, a moment of genuine meeting between two people where neither is objectifying the other, where both are fully present. Buber said these moments are rare, and they are always temporary. But they are possible. The difference between Schopenhauer and Buber is this. Schopenhauer decided bleeding was unacceptable, so he chose to freeze. Buber said bleeding is the cost of being alive, so he chose to risk it. I think I have been choosing Schopenhauer. I have decided that the pain of being misunderstood is worse than the pain of being alone. And to make the freezing bearable, I have wrapped myself in a story of intellectual superiority. But I am starting to suspect that I don't actually believe I am superior. I think I believe I am defective. And depth is the only currency I have that might make me valuable. Let me tell you what I think is really happening. Why do I choose the simulation over reality? Why do I choose analysis over experience? Because reality disappoints. In my head, the conversation is perfect. In my head, the romance is cosmic. In my head, my potential is limitless. But in reality, people stumble over their words. They misunderstand me. They get tired or distracted. Love is boring logistics about whose turn it is to do the dishes. My potential is limited by my energy, my resources, my mortality. I am a perfectionist of existence. And philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described exactly this trap. He called it the despair of possibility. He wrote about a person who gets lost in infinite possibility. They think about what could be so much that they lose contact with what is. They become like a castle built on clouds, vast and beautiful, but with no foundation. Kierkegaard contrasted this with the despair of necessity, the person who is so trapped in the real that they cannot imagine anything different. The person who just goes through the motions, dead inside. He said both are forms of despair. Both are ways of avoiding the hardest thing, being fully present in a limited, imperfect life. And this is where I need to say something that is hard for me to admit. I think part of me likes the isolation. Not in a conscious way. I am not a masochist. I genuinely suffer from loneliness. But there is a part of me, maybe the part that learned to survive by withdrawing, that finds the isolation safe. In my head, I am the king. In the world, I am just another person. In my head, I cannot fail because I never try. In my head, I cannot be rejected because I never reveal. In my head, I maintain the fantasy that I am special, that if only the world could see my true self, they would recognize my depth. But what if they did see me? What if I showed up fully, vulnerably, imperfectly, and they found me ordinary? What if the depth I have been protecting is not actually that deep? What if I am just a person? Psychoanalyst Adam Phillips wrote, "The greatest tyranny is the unlived life inside us." I think I have been tyrannized by the fantasy of who I could be if only the conditions were right, if only I found the right people, if only the world was less shallow, if only. But those conditions will never be right, because I am using them as an excuse. I am haunting my own life. I am present in body, but my mind is always somewhere else, in the past, dissecting a mistake, or in the future, predicting a disaster. The one place I never am is here. And that is why I feel empty. Not because life is meaningless, but because I am not in it. So what is the cost? The cost is that life passes me by while I am busy thinking about it. The cost is that I will look back on my 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I will have incredibly detailed thoughts about those decades, but very few memories of actually living them. I will realize that while I was analyzing the dynamics of friendship, my friends stopped calling because I never showed up. I will realize that while I was waiting for a connection that felt cosmic, I missed the simple, imperfect love that was standing right in front of me, wearing its human face. There is a passage from David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest that has haunted me for years. A character says, "The truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you." I think the truth is finishing with me, and it hurts. The truth is, I am not special. My suffering is not unique. My depth is not a spiritual gift. It is a defense mechanism I developed to survive something that is no longer happening. The truth is, the people I have been judging as shallow, they might actually be braver than I, because they are willing to show up imperfectly. They are willing to have the boring conversation. They are willing to risk being ordinary. The truth is, I have been choosing to be right rather than to be connected. And the cost of that choice is that I am becoming a ghost. A very intelligent, very perceptive ghost. But a ghost nonetheless. So is there a way out? I don't know. I am still inside this. I am not speaking from the other side. I am speaking from the cage, with the door slightly ajar, wondering if I have the courage to leave. But I have started to notice something. Small moments, cracks in the pattern. Last week, I was at a gathering. My instinct was to find a corner to observe. But I made a different choice. I walked up to someone I didn't know, and I said, "Hi, I'm terrible at small talk, but I'm trying to get better at it." And she laughed, and we talked. And it was awkward and imperfect, and I said at least 3 things I immediately regretted. And I survived. The world did not end. She did not expose me as a fraud. We just talked like humans. And I felt something I haven't felt in years present. Psychologist Carl Rogers said that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. I think I have been trying to change myself before accepting myself. But maybe the connection comes first. Maybe the acceptance comes first. Maybe I need to show up as the imperfect, overthinking, sometimes exhausting person I am, and trust that there are people who will meet me there. Not because I am deep, not because I am special, but because I am human. And humans are wired for connection, even when we are terrified of it. especially when we are terrified of it. Leonard Cohen sang, "There's a crack in everything." That's how the light gets in. Maybe my overthinking is not the enemy. Maybe it is just a crack, a wound that light can get through. Maybe yours is too. I don't have a tidy ending for you. I don't have 5 steps to fix this. I don't even know if it needs to be fixed. Maybe it just needs to be seen, acknowledged, held gently instead of judged harshly. Maybe the recognition itself is enough. Maybe noticing the pattern is the beginning of loosening it. I am still figuring this out. I am still in the room, still watching, still analyzing. But I am trying to do something I have never done before. I am trying to forgive myself for being afraid. And maybe that is where it starts.